telescopic ears tuned to the invisible radio sky. It detects not objects, but the radio regions associated with them, and at distances far beyond the range of the largest optical telescope. But the radio waves and the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground-based telescopes are only part of a broad spectrum of radiation, most of which is blocked by the atmosphere. So electronic instruments are lifted above this murky and turbulent layer. Airborne by rockets, spectrum of radiation, but most of which is blocked by the atmosphere. Radio waves and the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground-based telescopes are only part of a broad spectrum of radiation, most of which is blocked by the atmosphere. Radio waves and the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground-based telescopes are only part of a broad spectrum of radiation, most of which is blocked by the atmosphere. Radio waves and the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground-based telescopes are only part of a broad spectrum of radiation, most of which is blocked by the atmosphere. Radio waves and the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground-based telescopes are only part of a broad spectrum of radiation, atmosphere. Even through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground-based telescopes. Through the Earth's ground-based telescopes. 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 Ground-based
Radio waves and the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground-based telescopes are only part of a broad spectrum of radiation, most of which is blocked by the atmosphere, most of which is blocked. Radio waves and the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere, the visible light that pass through the Earth's atmosphere to these ground.
And with that, give me a minute to pick my brain up off the floor. Welcome to the Saturday Night Synthesis. Welcome back. It is episode 10. We made it to episode 10. We're really excited. We're really glad you're here with us. I'm your host, Alex, coming at you from Baltimore, Maryland. And we've got a great show lined up for you tonight, although it's going to be hard to top that because that was pretty amazing. I'm blown away. But do you know who else is amazing and is about to blow you away? Our special guest this week. He goes by the name enthusiasticElectrons. And, Frederick and I have been, trying to synthesizers online, getting more into them, checking out, getting new ideas, getting new inspiration. And we just found his music and we just really, really liked it and really wanted to come on the show. And he agreed to come on the show. And so he's here. And he's going to play a tune for us, and we're going to talk to him a little more about his music, his synthesizer, his songwriting process, and kind of the theme for this week, which is kind of the idea of music in this age of the pandemic and how people consume it, how everyone's in front of their computers and how they're kind of primed to kind of consume music and kind of make it in different ways too, and how that relates to synthesizers. We're all going to ask him why Mr. and Mrs. Electrons named their kid Enthusiastic. Was it a family name? Is it traditional? We're going to find that too. So we're going to get on that a little bit. But first, if you have any questions out there in the internet watching land about the patches that Frederick was doing, about the equipment he used to make that amazing song, put them in the comments for this episode and we will get back to you. And while you're there, why don't you press like and subscribe? Because we have 927 more subscriptions to the channel and we finally get that toaster. And I, for one, am tired of eating soft room temperature bread. So please subscribe. Also, follow us on Instagram. Why not? The handle is Saturday Night Synthesis, all one word. There's a link to it in the episode notes. You can also find links to enthusiasticElectrons, Instagram there, and his whole social media kaleidoscope. So check him out on there too if you like what you hear tonight. Or if you don't like what you hear tonight, you can check him out there. Again, I'm not the boss of you. One makes more sense to me than the other, but these are tough times. So speaking of trawling on the internet for shows about synthesizers, particularly you out there in the audience who have found us through the algorithm or found us through on Reddit or some other forum, what other shows are you watching? What should we be watching? What do you really like? Let us know. Put the names of it or just clips to or links to it in the episode comments, and we'll check them out. And maybe we'll have them on the show one day. That's kind of our plan. So help us out. Let us know who out there is also doing great stuff. We got a great audience here with us tonight. Audience, how's it going, guys? I have questions for you, which is, what have you guys been listening to? Well, how has been sitting in front of the computer changed how you kind of listen to music, how you entertain yourself like that? I know I have been kind of getting into like streams of DJs and sets of music on YouTube, which I had no idea existed, but is apparently a big thing. So, if you had told me 18 months ago I would be watching Argentinian DJs play house music out of their bedroom, I would probably not have believed you, but I wouldn't have believed a lot of stuff. I probably would have known 18 months ago enough to just be like, why are you talking to me from the future? This is really weird. Anyway, how about it, guys? What do you think? How have you been? How's this changed listening to music, being stuck in your room with headphones on your head?
I'd say for the better. It's me,
It's Jamie. Jamie, how are you? Jamie from Chicago, Illinois.
Let's see. I am continuing to slowly trickle in a few more vinyl selections every now and then. I had an interesting experience the other day. My wife and I came home from dinner, and I took the dog out. And then when I was walking back in, a neighbor in our building looked like she needed a lot of help carrying stuff up to her apartment. So I said, do you need any help? She had cans, like all sorts of stuff. And she said no. And then as I was passing her, I saw that she had a stack of vinyl sitting right there. And the top album was an all white cover. And it looked like that famous Average White Band album cover. Where
Average White Butt?
The lady's booty.
Yeah.
Average White Band, that like booty cover.
I believe the technical term for that cover is average white butt.
Okay. Oh, all right. Thank you. Correct. It turned out not to be, but I asked her about it, and then we got into a conversation about vinyl, and she insisted on giving me a stack of these records. I said, no, of course not. I did the Disney, they have to refuse the tip twice, and then they give it to you on the third one.
Is that a Disney law?
That's a secret Disneyism. If you try to tip a Disney employee, you have to do it 3 times, and they can only take the tip on the 3rd try.
You have to be 3 times.
Shady as fuck.
Refuse 3 times.
Refuse it 3 times? Okay, cool. But you're good after that. So thank you. So I take these records inside and I start going through them, and I turn to one and my heart drops. It's the Well-Tempered Synthesizer by someone help me on the name. I say, oh my God, I'm going to have a couple more beers and I'm going to throw this on. I'm going to listen to this this is amazing. This is Kismet. It's destiny. And then I go through, one of the other records she had. And then when I pull out the record for the Well-Tempered Synth, it's a reading of, what was it? Not Hamlet. It was a Shakespeare. It was Macbeth. It was the audiobook of Macbeth mistakenly put into the wrong album sleeve. And that's what I listened to it still, but
that was a good time to brush up on your Shakespeare, Jamie.
Oh, well, I'm about to launch into some show tunes. But before I do that, I think I'd be remiss if I did not introduce to everyone the founder of the Feast, the man, the myth, the legend, coming at us, making beautiful music from semi-permanent exile on the longest of the islands, Frederick Foxtrott. Frederick, why haven't you've been holding on us? That was amazing. You should read the chat. You should read the chat while you're playing among the live audience. We plotzed basically.
It was awesome. I wanted to see how many different oscillators I could get, like doing melodies over each other in one thing. I kind of actually had not a lot of time to get this one together, so I was really fortunate. I randomly, it was like space NASA talk sound bites, and that came up. Like the first Google hit was, or the YouTube hit was perfect for it. So I'm glad y'all liked it.
Well, I'm always down for some Shatner too. I was like, is that? Oh yeah. So what else were you doing? So you had, it seemed like you're using a lot of stuff on the mod this week. Was you kind of going for that, or?
Yeah, let me go ahead and just bring it over to the synth. You can see through the nest of patch cables here. So I brought back the phonogene. I haven't used the phonogene in a while, which I used to sample the NASA documentary voice. One of the kind of downfalls or flaws of my rig is that I don't have a lot of envelope generators, which means I can have a signal come across great from all my oscillators, but how they open and close. And because Maths is such a great utility, you can essentially use it as a way to create those envelope generators. And then at the same time, you can use that stoicheia that we had used earlier to kind of have that rhythmic bop, 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 that was kind of triggering that envelope in a Euclidean way. And then, of course, you heard the circuit bent VCO was one of the main oscillators that you heard. So what I tried to do was bring together all the different modules that I had been featuring over the past couple of weeks. And then, of course, the Mother 32 is the brain trust of it all. And then the BeatStep Pro had 2 different sequences that were going on. The bass line, the main kind of melody that was the track began with. To be honest, the writing process kind of started off as like a Tangerine Dream sequenced arpeggiation of just going back and forth, and I built on top of that. And right now I'm having the biggest case of deja vu I've had in probably 20 years. So whatever that means.
Oh, I always like to think that.
What was standing out for you? Like what was the standout kind of feat? Like sometimes it's hard for me to know what stands out in a song.
I really, because we've been learning about the modules, and I remember you talking about the phonogene and how it samples these clips, and I was really kind of intellectually interested in how to use the phonogene, but also it really hit me. I didn't know where you were going with it, right? I was like, oh, this is going to have this like talk over this thing, and then you started to kind of glitch it and sample it, and then it went away, and then it came back at the end, and then you kind of like played with the sample as an instrument, and I thought it sounded really cool. I was really excited about it because I didn't know where you're going, and it was really an interesting use of it. But also, I was like, oh, I know what he's doing with the phonogene to kind of make that sample and make that go around and around. If you have any questions about that, you can check the other videos in the Frederick Foxtrott YouTube channel. there at home about how the phonogene works. We have a whole video about it. If you're interested in how he did that in that song, if you want to use it for your own music, that's a little plug right there. That's what they call it in the industry. I like it too. I like it when the songs are a little dark like that. You know, they're kind of like they kind of come from that place. They kind of come from that. They kind of come from that kind of emotional place, a little dark, a little dangerous. I kind of like that sound. It appeals to me a lot.
So, you know, we've been, you know, I hang out a lot in this Discord called EMS, which is Earth Modular Society, and it has a really heavy modular synthesis focus. So for this, and you know, going along with our guest today, I wanted to kind of keep it as centralized into the modular rack as much as possible, where usually I might bring in a lot more key synths and then guitar, or have more intricate drumming. But for this, I wanted to use the looper as little as possible. I wanted to use the key synths as little as possible, and just write out no guitar, just to kind of keep in the kind of theme of Earth Modular Society. And you know, I always talk about how you put limits on yourself, and then you can see how far you can get within those limits. And that was certainly one of those exercises for this week, for sure.
Well, yeah, it was really, you know, I think the consensus is that it was one of everyone's favorite songs you've ever done. It was one of my favorite songs you've ever done. It was just, we can stop talking about that, and we can start talking about our musical guest for this week, enthusiasticElectrons. He is, he's got a tune that he's made just for us, and I'm really excited about it. I got a little preview of it, and it's dope. I'm really into it. And so we're just gonna go right into that, and then we're gonna have a little talk. And when you are ready, take it away. All right. That was awesome. I just love, that's why we wanted you on the show, because I just love that sound. I love like how, and I really like how you use the keys too. I kind of like, as I watch more synthesizer music, like the effect with the keys in it, in with the synthesizer. I really like that about it. Anyway, enough about me and what things I think. Everybody, this is Enthusiastic Electrons. So kind of what were you doing there? Like how'd you come up with that tune?
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, so it's going well. So basically I was doing a lot of improving here, as you probably could figure out. One thing I like to do is play around with the different parts, and I've used to play keys. I used to play jazz, a piano and a jazz quintet long ago, and took some time away from that, and then discovered the synthesizer, and originally thought that I was going to play the synthesizer with keys, but very quickly discovered that it was a lot more fun to just patch things up and see what happened. Basically, what I've got here is, this is a Make Noise No Coast, which is sort of it's a semi-modular synthesizer. So where this is all modular synthesizers, and each component, each module does one thing. So there's the oscillator, which oscillates, and there's the, volume control, and then effects, and all sorts of filters, things like that. The semi-modular synthesizer has all of these things sort of built into one, but it's still, you can patch it. So if there was nothing patched in, it would make sound. But then you can sort of override the internal patching with cables, and then you can also plug that into your other modular modules.
Yeah,
and so,
and you would say that that's like the Make Noise parallel to like the Mother 32 or any of these.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any of these kind of like they want to start you off in modular by having something that's more intuitive as far as flow, and then but it also gives that side or these patch points basically that allow you to once you get a handle on things to really kind of do your own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so when it was a couple of years ago actually, when I'd known about the Moogs of the 70s and all the big towers of synths growing up, but then a couple of years ago I wandered into a synth store and suddenly saw all of the different modules there and thought that sounds pretty exciting, but a little intimidating. I just want to keep it small. So my original goal was just to get one of these. I wasn't sure which one, but this was recommended, and I like the sort of the chaos of it. So the Make Noise, their whole approach, it's a company based down in Asheville, North Carolina, and they've been around for a long time in the synth world, so it's, 10 years, maybe something like that. Their sort of whole idea is to have a little mystery. Like, you want to be able to control things, but they like to have a little mystery too. So this is the No Coast, which references East Coast versus West Coast models of synthesis. So there's the East Coast, which is sort of stands for the more traditional Moog synthesizers, where it's basically a keyboard instrument which you patch up and it makes cool sounds. And then at the same time, Don Buchla was inventing his whole set of synths, which were designed to be more generative and sort of their own kind of thing. So generative, there's a lot of more uncertainty, and also the way that the sound is built is sort of building on sound instead of sort of filtering it out. It's called additive synthesis instead of subtractive. But don't mean to be getting into East Coast, West Coast thing, but the idea with the No Coast is that it borrows from both of those. And so you can patch it into a keyboard and play it like a traditional synth, East Coast synth if you want, or you can make it do all sorts of weird sounds. My whole idea was to start with this and then sort of build out. So I got one module initially that was just an effects module, which is sort of could bounce around. It's a clouds, mutable instruments clouds variant, Monsoon. So basically what it does is it'll sample the sound, but only up to 1 second and down to a couple of milliseconds. And so you can do all sorts of weird things with that. And then I also got a mixer, and one thing led to the next, and now I have more modules.
I call it the sickness.
Yes, exactly.
That's the worst part is when you get like a rack, or you get something like a case. You'll just spend all of your money and all of your time trying to fill it.
Right. I was just thinking, I was trying to keep it small, but this is I feel like I'm getting close to. I have a couple more modules that I want to build. Some of these are from kits as well, so
great.
Put them together. A lot of AI synthesis kits, which are a great way to learn about how the synthesis actually works. on the other side of the panel. Yeah, well, anyway, so basically, and then this is the no control, which sort of came out as a complement to that. So in terms of the whole process here, this is a sequencer, but it's also a touchpad, and it has all sorts of different rows, and depending on how you patch it, it can be really weird. And the whole idea here is that it's all analog. It's not on a grid. If you just have it turned one way, it'll go dot, 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 dot. But you can also mess with the time controls and speed and slow, stretch out individual steps. And the way it's patched in, this actually wasn't as random as some patches I've done. But what I really enjoy doing, I sort of brought the piano back and introduced it not too long ago, where you end up with some weird things happening. And some of these modules, like this one, will sample up to 41 seconds, and it will sort of loop back on itself, and you can add some other modulation to it to control how long the sample is, and whether it's going forwards or backwards, and whether it's splitting one way or another, and all sorts of things like that. So then you don't know what you're going to hear. And so I like to have that happen, and then sort of respond to it the way that you would with a jazz band or with any sort of improv situation where you're listening and you're responding. And so, I could do just a really quick breakdown of, I have a couple different sections. There's the main line was the no coast, or the no control going into the no coast, or O coast, or zero coast. All of those are correct, apparently. And, sort of like mess around with that until there's some sort of groove that I like. And then added a couple other things. So then there was also tides, which is it's a module where if it goes slow, then it can add modulation. If it goes fast, then it's an oscillator. So right now I have it as mutable instruments, right? Exactly, mutable instruments, tides, and it's I got this to add a little. It can be a very pleasant sound because you can add chords. It can be a quad oscillator, and you can round out the tones, and it can add a nice sound. Because before that, all I had was the no coast, which can do good sounds, but it also does a lot of harsh sounds and plucky sounds. And then I had a couple other things which just were saw waves and whatnot, which are great, but they're not necessarily as.
There was a hollow wood sound, like a hollow wooden. And it's filtered through Zoom, so I'm not exactly sure, exactly how it sounds. But what was that kind of clip? Do you know what I'm talking about? It almost sounded like percussive in a way. Yeah.
This is actually a filter. It's a stereo filter, the Basil Ickery. It's fairly new. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but it has a space theme, so it goes with your patch as well. But it's a stereo filter, and what happens with an analog filter or a digital one is if you turn up the resonance, which is right at the point where the filter filters out a certain sound or a certain frequency, the resonance, it will add a bump to it, so you can hear it makes a louder harmonic frequency at a certain pitch, and you can resonate that. If you send a little burst of sound, then it will excite the resonator, and it will just make this sound, this hollow sound.
And what's that pedal there?
This is a ditto looper pedal. For the whole rundown, there's the no coast. And the no coast, I usually go out from that into the carbon copy analog delay, which I love. I just use this all the time. And so that's just adding a little bit of delay sounds. You can also turn it up if you want. Get some good Radiohead self-oscillating. That's just the delay pedal there. And then from there, that then is going into the Mimeophon, which is a make noise. It can go really quickly, and so then it's sort of a delay, or it can go really long, and it's a looper, so it's anywhere in between.
I think that's like the grandchild of the phonogene.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I was thinking if you're talking about pulling the phonogene out again, I was like, it's the deja vu, because it plays, sort of, you go back in time.
Yeah.
So with this one. That's just the same effect that was just happening with this analog pedal, where it's repeating so quickly that it's just sort of making this weird reverberating sound. But that's in zone 1. So now I can flip this knob, And now I'm going back replaying the last 40 seconds or 41 seconds. And then I can skip through it. So now I'm going back in time over the last 41 seconds and messing around with it. And then that's getting fed back into itself. So now that's going to keep happening. And I could add more echo. This is actually the first module that I completely fell in love with. Really wanted. Actually, no, it's the second one. The first one, when I was playing the No Coast, I wanted just a function module.
Right.
Turn that down. It's basically I wanted something to add more oscillators or more low frequency oscillators. But this thing I didn't get for a long time. I finally got it pretty recently, and it was all that I dreamt of.
It's on the list. It's on my list. So when my next case gets bought, it will be one of the things that fills it. So
yeah, it's I started out with these little pods, the 4MS pods, which is basically just a little case, and so it's. This one here is the same size as those. And then I got a bigger one. And then I got a lunchbox that I put some rails in here. It's just a lunchbox. And then now I have some extra rails, which I need to put on. I'll just attach to some boards. And,
sure.
It grows and grows. So, and actually, just the one other thing, since if we're going through and looking at these. This is the tides. In oscillator mode. Can be all 4 oscillators at once, and this knob is cool because it changes the relationship between the different the sort of the fundamental.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it sounds really cool, and I was going to use it at one point, but as this was going, I felt like it was getting a little more jumbled up perhaps than I wanted it. This particular performance is getting a little out of control, not necessarily in a organized way. So I thought that would just be too much. So.
I always call it like spinning plates, right? So
yeah,
spinning plates, and then you feel you're on the edge of like, okay, it's time to I can't add anymore. I have to kind of scale it back to get control over it again. You always feel like you're about to lose it,
Yeah, exactly. And then I've got using maths right now as a slew. And this is sort of there's an adder. There's the voltage. So, yeah, you can see the maths is making the voltage change gradually there.
Everyone's
and then the other one. The other one was adding on to the main bass line to transpose that.
Very cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
The only question I have is, did you know that one Frederick Foxtrott, you were playing that, show them the slide, the electric slide. Can you play that so we can see?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Because I saw you playing this on a video and I thought it was really cool.
So I'll pull this out here a little bit. This is a a soft pot. It's a potentiometer, so basically it limits the amount of voltage going through it. And normally a potentiometer, you'd have a knob. You just turn it into no voltage, you turn it a lot of voltage. And with control voltage, that controls whatever you plug into it. So this is a linear one, so you push it and it's like a slide here. So right now it's plugged into the Mimeophon. So when it's doing this, which is called car plus strong.
Oh, so getting that vibrato.
What metal is that strip made from? Metals, maybe.
I don't know.
Is it a partially resistive metal? Is it a more slightly resistive to?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the amount of the distance from one end to the other that the wiper goes as you physically turn it. If it's in the case of a slider, it'll make the distance between one end and the slider longer,
Right.
and so it has to travel through, so it increases the resistance.
So is there
And the
is
same
there a
thing with
negative
this, yeah.
strip in the middle of it going down?
It's probably something like that. It's probably two different strips. I don't know exactly how this is constructed. It's probably two different strips, and as you
Gotcha.
push it down, and this is actually very precise. This one's designed for machine control, so you'd put it next to like a robot arm, and so it could know exactly where the robot is. So it's extremely precise, and so it actually sounds. It's pretty great when you're using it for something like pitch. You just move your finger a little bit, and it'll respond a lot.
Yeah, or like the pedal steel theremin is what I've decided to call it, because I like the
Exactly, yeah. When I built it, I was actually working on a song inspired by Dolly Parton, and so I thought, I need a lap steel kind of thing. And I was like, but as I was building, I was like, it's not going to sound like a lap steel at all. It's going to sound like a theremin, and usually, actually, when I plug it into something else, it actually ends up sounding more like a flute, like a wood flute, like. But. It's just all how you play it. It's fun though.
No, yeah, because I was like, it's that. Yeah, because I think the video was when you did the video. I saw the one when you were for the Bushwick Book Club. You wrote a song about Dune, and that are you a Dune person like one Frederick Foxtrott is a Dune person, in that it borders on unhealthy obsession? Because that's one thing. Now the whole.
I'm not. It's actually the first. So. Well.
Frederick, I believe you would qualify as a Dune person.
The first 6 books, I read it out loud to my kid, every night for the first 2 years of his life. I read one chapter of Dune for the 6 books, but it's the series, and Frank Herbert, the author, is a person who I like to kind of fight with as much as I like to obsess over his writing, but yeah, I'm definitely a huge Dune fan. I cannot lie about that. But
so that's actually the Bushwick Book Club is something we started out in New York. Now there are chapters all over the place. I know some people who run the Los Angeles chapter, and so it was actually well over a year ago, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, that they were doing Frankenstein, and that's when I got my first modular. It was a semi-modular synth, and it was actually a clone of the Model D, the Moog Model D, so it was a Behringer clone. They were doing Frankenstein, and I thought, actually, well, there's another thing I did is I took an electromagnetic pickup, and I stuck it onto an iPad, and I had the ebook of Frankenstein. And when you put a pickup on an electronic device, you get this sound, and when you flip the pages on an iPad or something like that, it makes crazy gnarly sounds. So I ran that through the carbon copy and then filtered that through the synth and created something like that and added some bass line for that. But that was a lot of fun because I hadn't performed live in years since I was part of the jazz quintet. It had been a long time. And so it was a lot of fun and it was actually kind of funny because the Bushwick Book Club, it's a lot of singer-songwriters. There's a lot of people with guitars or pianos. And then I'd get up there each month and go, just strange sounds. I was actually just looking at my calendar right before the pandemic shut everything down. It was the last thing I did. It was a week before. We're just like, wait, should we still go out and do things? People are like, it's maybe it's not going to arrive here yet.
I went to a basketball game.
Wow.
Maybe we can transition to that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about actually was the ways in which the pandemic kind of. The way I look at it is that a lot of us have been making videos or been playing and recording ourselves with the Modular for a while. And sometimes you might share it with other enthusiasts or whatever, or performers. But this idea of playing to the internet, which isn't, obviously it's not original, but I almost feel that because of the pandemic, it almost created an audience because now all of a sudden it changed the way that people expect to consume entertainment, whereas before it's very much, going to a show on Zoom or going to a show on the internet. It seemed like a kind of strange thing to do. But I just noticed that since the pandemic kind of occurred, all of a sudden you have these different groups that are coming together to be able to, create a kind of virtual stage for us all to play on and to listen to each other. And I don't know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how you think the pandemic has changed. And then maybe if you could, I guess the follow-up would be is, where do you think it goes after this? Let's say when it's all over, do do we keep this kind of entertainment consumption in the way that we do now?
I mean, it's so interesting. With music, with this particular, with this thing here, with the Bushwick Book Club that I was doing, obviously that shut down. And then I was just getting into playing with the synth and playing out. And I think what happened was a lot of musicians just started broadcasting using Instagram, and they were doing live feeds and live streams. And during the first month or so, there were a lot of musicians were doing that because they had to cancel their concerts. I mean, since it's just coming up on a year now, I was looking back at my calendar a year ago, and it was a week after that show that suddenly I was like, everything shut down. And that's actually this week, I think a year ago, or next week. And we had a couple concerts that we were going to go to. We were actually going to see Dolly Parton, speaking of Dolly Parton. But everything, and we're like, is that still going to happen? And we're like, that sure probably is not going to happen. And then nothing happened. So it's interesting because it's something where suddenly anyone who could broadcast, people who are just doing their own thing could broadcast, but then big musicians are also just broadcasting from home. So it's interesting to see how that has evolved. With regards to synthesizers specifically, that's right when I was starting to do more, but it seemed like, so I was like, oh, there's these synth societies, and I started to discover the different synth societies, and there was a podcast, the Modular Modcast, started to listen to that, where Tim, the host of that, just talks with a lot of different people in the synth community. And what was interesting, and something that I've actually learned more recently, is that it was new for a lot of people at that time. Like a lot of these synth societies, the Colorado Synth Society, the New York Synth Society, all these modular synth societies, they were pretty brand new right around that time, just maybe half a year before the pandemic at most. And everyone was sort of operating in isolation as well. Like that's right around the time, like just a few months before I started, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Perfect Circuit and hang out at some of the talks there, maybe meet some people, and then everything shut down. But what happened was people in the modular world anyway they just switched over right away. And there are people making YouTube videos, but then people started doing live streams and they started organizing. And I don't know, that's one thing that I don't know about with regards to synths versus other types of music is, this is something which is very technical. And so a lot of people who are involved would have the wherewithal to maybe stream. The different societies started streaming, and Discord, that you mentioned, sort of really took off. And I think right around that time they rebranded. They're like, we're just going to be for everybody to meet up. And just a big community, right? It was like gaming. Same thing with Twitch. Twitch was already set up for streaming, and it was largely used for gamers to stream video games. But immediately, a lot of people who were doing other events started to have events on Twitch, and like, oh, we'll have a band on Twitch, and it's all these things that are live. And but I think it's what you're talking about with people's expectations changing. Is sort of have learned how it all works, and the synth societies are now people get together and they sort of know, oh, the New York Society is doing one thing, and the Colorado Society is doing something, and someone's streaming from Denmark or wherever, and people will find out about it. And the Earth Modular Society, which you mentioned, that was started by a guy over in England. He said, let's have a 24/7 channel where we can anyone who wants to stream is like an open mic. And people started doing it, and it's a lot of fun. I hop on there.
I want to hop on one of these days, I promise.
It's great. And what's happened is that some people start streaming regularly, and now there's... and there are these stream train events as well, which they've started organizing, where people will stream for 20 minutes or half an hour and then, sign up and then say, okay, now you go. And it's people from all over the world. And so it's pretty exciting to see that happen. And I heard an interview recently with the guys from the New York Modular Society, the two of the three people who started that. And they were talking about how, after this is all over, people are really excited to start going back to live in-person meetings and in-person performances, but everyone's, at least in the modular world, says it's not going to go back entirely because this online thing is wonderful. It's great because people can connect from all over the world, and now there are people involved from all over the world with each of these societies, and they said there's no way we could cut them out now. So I think it'll be a hybrid.
Maybe I could throw that to you, Alex, because you're a person who you don't play synthesizer, but you consume a lot of music, and that's where I'm really interested in the evolving role of the consumer, right? And people are learning or becoming familiar with this new way to consume entertainment. And so what do you think about that, Alex? Like, do you see yourself as someone who has really changed the way, or had you done this before? Like, had you really kind of gotten into?
No, it was not something I didn't like listen to music on YouTube. Wasn't like a thing it's not the platform I used to do that. But I used to go, I like to go to shows. I used to go to a lot of shows, even in my old age, comparatively, so it's like a thing I really like to do. And so there's none of that. There's a thing I'd say about Zillow, like you look at houses, there's the websites where you can look at what concerts are, that band's playing then, and what are these tours going. And what's interesting now, and I think people are going to figure out, is I was like, oh, they could be doing this instead of me seeing these bands once a year, but they are playing 100, however many shows a year, but I'm not following them around. So maybe they'll come to town once, or in a place like Baltimore once every couple of years. But it's I would watch that all the time. I would watch these bands if they wanted to stream a show. I'd watch it's what you could do. You could do 2 nights a week or 3 nights a week. I'd watch someone every week, or you'd watch the same band over and over again do the show. And I'd pay money to see that. For sure. So they're gonna have to figure that out. Or you could go just a club could stream their stage, and you could have the patch from the soundboard, and you could just have the camera, and I'd watch you could go to clubs all over the world and watch that, or watch DJ sets or that kind of stuff too. You could stream DJ sets live, and not just the big ones of the things, but and you could monetize. I think you can monetize that really easily, which is the thing, right? Because people need them. I mean, not just in society at large we need money, but clubs and performers need money, and so that's a way to do.
It's fun with live streaming. A lot is happening in the chats on the side. People are commenting, and it's a lot of it, because that's being at a live venue. It's a lot. You can hang out and talk with people, and you're there with other people, and you're experiencing this thing together. And you sort of don't get that when you're at home. But then when you can chat all the time, it's you do get some of that back, and it's a lot of, and it's also one thing that in this particular community that I've discovered, and I've heard a lot of people comment on this, is that it's very supportive. And so that's a nice thing with what's happening with the modular synth society, the modular synth world, is that people are very supportive, and people are getting, new people are learning about other music. And so it will be interesting to see what happens once things open back up. And people can actually see each other in person. But two things where you're saying, actually, I remember back in the early 2000s, there was actually, the Knitting Factory had Knit TV. Yeah, they were basically doing that. They were broadcasting from various...
across the street from the Knitting Factory in Brooklyn. So,
oh, really? Nice. Yep.
Yeah, I lived on Rolling Street, yeah.
Rolling, yeah.
In some ways, the anonymity of the internet allows you to be as cruel as you can be, whereas other parts of the internet are, just as you said, extremely supportive and allows you to play in ways that and for people in ways you had never before.
Well, and it just makes you think too about space, and people want to live in New York and places like that, but there's also people who have these interests who live all over the country. The opportunity for people to grow up being able to do these things and consume media in this ways, and have that be part of their daily life from a young age, as opposed to just hearing about or even I think is really an interesting part of that too, that anyone from anywhere over the world can do the EMS, can stream this thing, and you don't have to have the means necessarily, or or just opportunity to live in a place like Brooklyn.
With a synthesizer, kind of what we were talking about earlier, is it's kind of like a band in a box, and because you play something and you jam, but if you program it right, then it'll do things that aren't expected, and that's the idea. Is it's not just sort of a track necessarily that you can play
every
with.
Week. I feel like every week we have a conversation about how there's this responsive quality to synthesizer, modular specifically.
Yeah, and I think I'm one of maybe 95% of people who I've heard, when they talk about who play the modular synthesizers, I spend all my time in front of a screen during the day. That's not what I want to do when I'm playing an instrument. But
sure, yeah,
it's the kind of thing also with modular. It can be this big daunting thing. Some people have enormous cases filled with gear, but it can also just be a couple pieces. And the idea with the modular is the fact that you piece the different elements together the way that you want. So you can have just a little inexpensive oscillator, something that's not necessarily mounted in a rack. It can be, just there are much. You could build something for a few dollars if you had the right electronic components, and it would go, wah, and then you build another one, and it filters it out, and it's just, and if you're putting it together somehow to make it what you want, I think that's sort of the spirit of modular, which people really like. And so then it's people can bring whatever they want to it.
I think that we've had a great conversation. It was really great. Well, I guess what I do want to say is thank you, Enthusiastic, for getting out here and being on the show. This has been a really, kind of big trip for us as we've been doing this through the pandemic, and it's been great to meet people. And usually it's either in Discord or, some other kind of non-personable way. And this was just a great kind of venture into seeing what other kind of collaborations could look like. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on. It was it's a lot of fun talking about this, and great meeting you in person. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Excellent.
Oh yeah, well, thanks so much for doing it, and thanks for the audience. Thanks you guys for showing up and contributing. I really appreciate that. It's always really nice to see so many people out there enjoying it with us, because it's really fun to see it live. If you'd like to see things live, you will have missed Enthusiastic Electrons on the stream train, which is happening tomorrow. But by the time you see this on YouTube, it will be in the past. But if you go to the EMS YouTube channel, you can see a recording of that thing that happened in the past that's actually in our future, but it's in your past. But you can just click on the EMS YouTube channel, and it'll be there, and you can watch Enthusiastic Electrons do some more synth playing if you liked it, or check out his YouTube channel. The link to that's going to be in the episode comments. Also, think about all the equipment they talked about tonight. It was really interesting to learn about all those modules. We'll have links to all that stuff in the notes of the episode too. So go check that out if you're at all interested in that. If you're interested in anything else, themes or ideas you have for shows or other gear that you might want to see featured, put them in the comments of this episode, and we will check them out. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because that would make us feel better about ourselves, if we're being perfectly honest. That's it. Good night, everybody. Thank you guys so much. We will see you next in a couple weeks. See ya.
Fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll do it live. I don't give a fuck.